Genocide shall be understood as any policy undertaken with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group.
At various times in this country's history, there have been policies that would equate to genocide because they say kill them all.
Kill the Indian, save the man in every single pupil.
To me, the suicide epidemic happening in Indian country is just a manifestation of all this history.
The problems surrounding alcohol, gangs, health are truly beyond what we understand.
I brought to Congress bottles of water from Indian reservations. This is what people are expected to drink.
All right, shalom. This is GMS Wisconsin.
Shalom.
All praises to Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. And today's lesson is going to be on the American Indian boarding schools. You know, basically how they indoctrinated the Gadites over here in North America and turned them into Americans, exactly. This is a document from Wikipedia, the American Indian boarding schools. It says American Indian boarding schools were boarding schools established in the United States during the late 19th and early 20th centuries to educate Native American children and youth according to Euro-American standards. They were first established by Christian missionaries of various denominations, who often started schools on reservations and founded boarding schools to provide opportunities for children who do not have schools nearby, especially in the lightly populated areas of the West. The government paid religious societies to provide education to Native American children on reservations. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries.
Right, now you see how they keep saying religious societies, Christian missionaries. Why? Because that's how the Edomites came to GAD, right? They came with Christianity, right? But the Lord told them they weren't supposed to be touching the Bible anyway. Because you see what happened. They made peace treaties, and then they end up stabbing them in the back.
This is Psalms chapter 50, verse 16. It says, "But unto the wicked the Most High saith, What hast thou to do to declare my statutes?"
Right, so they wasn't supposed to even pick up the Bible and come in the name of Christianity, right?
Or that thou shouldest take my covenant in my mouth, in thy mouth.
Yep.
Seeing thou hatest instruction.
Right, because the white man made hundreds of peace treaties with GAD, right? GAD and Reuben. And then end up going against their own peace treaties by stabbing them in the back, taking them down, giving them boarding schools when they had their own way of life, their own culture already.
And casteth my words behind thee.
Right.
When thou sawest a thief. Right, and what's part of the words? Thou shalt not murder. And that's what Esau did when he came over here. He raped, robbed, and murdered, the indigenous people of the tribes of this country. Seeing thou hatest instruction, and casteth thy words behind thee, when thou sawest a thief, then thou contendest with him, and hast been partaker with adulterers. Thou givest thy mouth to evil, and thy tongue frameth deceit. Like the brother was just talking about. They formed treaties, and then they broke every single treaty. You basically making a promise or a covenant with somebody, and you breaking it. It says, "Thou sittest and speakest against thy brother."
Right, and that's what they're doing now, because the word Indian derives from the Latin, it was idios, which means savage.
Yep.
Right? That's them speaking against thy brother. They put that byword on the Indians, right? And now today they call it what? Drunken Indians.
Yep. And don't forget about the mascots of the so-called sports teams. You got the what is it? The Washington Redskins. You got the Seattle Seahawks. You got the Chicago Blackhawks, and various other teams.
Mockery. Because basically what they're showing is that they conquered them Indians and took on their names. That's Esau for you. He conquer you, and then he'll take on your nationality like it's him.
Yep. Thou slanderest thine own mother's son.
Yeah, right, because we're supposed to be brothers. Like,
yep. And then he did that to the whole nation. Overall, he calls himself the Israelites, man. These things hast thou done, and I kept silence. Thou thoughtest that I was altogether such an one as thyself.
Right. Esau thought the Most High was with him with that. right? Because they was able to take down Gad and Reuben.
But I will reprove thee.
Right, and that's what time we coming into. That's why we bringing this out, because it's for the edification on who Gad is today, the North American Indians, on who Reuben is today, the Seminole Indians. Right? The Lord is reproving them. He's raising us up first, right? And then we're going to get our revenge. But it starts with the knowledge.
And set them in order before thine eyes.
See? That's
Now,
why you see Israelite camps raising up all over America and all over the world right now.
now consider this, ye that forget the Most High, lest I tear you in pieces, and there be none to deliver.
Yeah, and a lot of people going to be torn in pieces, man. Because they don't know Yahweh Shema Shai.
Whoso offereth praise glorifieth me, and to him that ordereth his conversation aright will I show salvation of the Most High.
See?
And that's the message to all you wetback and all you tomahawk carrying niggas, man. Y'all supposed to get y'all mind off of setting yourself on equality in this piece of shit country, and setting yourself on the law, statute, commandments of the Most High, man. And then after that comes your revenge and your salvation. That's what you're supposed to be thinking about. Let me go back into this real quick. Back in the Indian boarding schools document, it says, who often started schools or reservations and founded boarding schools to provide opportunities for children who do not have schools nearby, especially in the lightly populated areas of the West. The government paid religious societies to provide education to Native American children on reservations. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which is a branch of the Department of War, founded additional boarding schools based on a simulation model of the Carlisle Indian Industrial School. Now, the Carlisle Indian Industrial School, which we're going to go over in a little bit in this lesson, is the first boarding school that was created, and is the model for all the rest of them over the country, all over the country. Now, the Bureau of Indian Affairs was created out of the Department of War as a war tactic. This whole indoctrination and with the boarding schools is a so-called war tactic to keep the Gadites at bay, man. It says, children were usually immersed in European American culture through appearance changes with haircuts and were forbidden to speak their native languages. And traditional names were replaced by new European American names.
Alright, so y'all basically got turned into slaves.
Mm-hmm.
White man put y'all up under subjection, man. And it said, what did you say again?
It says, and were appearance changes with haircuts.
Yep.
Were forbidden to speak their native languages.
Right, they took off their garments. They stopped talking their Hebrew, because they spoke Hebrew, right? Their traditional names were replaced by new European American names. That's a philosophy. The Edomites threw out another philosophy, another way of life for the Gadites and the Reubenites, man. That goes back to Revelations 12 and 15. It says, and the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman.
Right, and that's those philosophies, man. Especially through these so-called boarding schools and these colleges and universities. They threw the indigenous, the Gadites into these universities and pumped them with all the European philosophies and knowledge that they had, in order to wash them of their own traditions and to create
what you see now today.
Right, create what you see now today.
Drunken Indians.
Right.
With a suicide rate that's higher than, how much was it?
It's 120% higher than the national average. That he might cause her to be carried away of the flood.
Right. The witchcraft, the doctrine, right? Because they don't know that they Gad and Reuben. They think they're North American Indians. They think they Cherokee. What is it? Choctaw?
Yeah, Choctaw, Navajo.
Right. It says, and the right. Verse 16, and the earth helped the woman.
Right, meaning all the historical facts and the archaeologists, when they digging up the artifacts and everything, that helped the woman. Meaning that helped the nation of Israel, because all the history started coming back. The Most High basically went into the minds of these so-called renowned scientists and archaeologists and actually helped them pull the history together so we can line up the prophecies with the people of the scripture so we can know who we are today.
And the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth.
Right, so all of them lies are being broken down and torn down, man.
And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of Yahweh Bashim Shai and have the testimony of Yahweh Shai.
Yep. And you see that going on now, you brothers in the camps, man. They see all the truth in their lives being broken down through the history. So what are they trying to do now? They're trying to change certain words in the Hebrew and the blue letter. They're trying to take certain historical documents off of the internet through the CISPA bill. This is back in the document. It says, and were forbidden to speak their native languages, and traditional names were replaced by new European American names. The experience of the schools was often harsh, especially for the younger children who were separated from their families. In numerous ways, they were encouraged or forced to abandon their Native American identities and cultures.
Yep, that goes to the curses, byword and proverb.
2016. It says the number of Native American children in the boarding schools reached a peak in the 1970s, with an estimated enrollment of 60,000 in 1973. Okay.
All right, this is Deuteronomy, because these are curses that was put on Gad and Reuben. This is Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 37. And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whither the Lord shall lead thee. Right, so that's why y'all calling each other's Indians now, man.
It says, investigations of the later 20th century have revealed many documented cases of sexual, manual, physical, and mental abuse occurring at such schools. So, if it's documented that the people are being abused, well, what does that tell you? They have to be forced to take on these philosophies and these ways. And that just shows you, man, due to the curses and, you know, Esau's blessing, man, Esau's having his way with you niggas, man. This is in the section non-reservation boarding schools. It says west of the Mississippi, schools near Indian settlements on reservations were first founded by religious missionaries who believed they could extend education and Christianity to Native Americans. Some of their efforts were part of the progressive movement after the Civil War. Now, the progressive movement is basically political reform in the United States.
Yeah, that flood.
Right. It says, as Native Americans were forced into reservations following the Indian Wars, which the Indian Wars is a culmination of a period from 1622 all the way to about 1870, where Gad, Reuben, and Esau were constantly fighting each other for control of the territory. It says missionaries founded additional schools with boarding facilities to accommodate students who lived too far to attend on a daily basis. Which all that's a ploy. Like the brother said earlier, the Gadites and the Reubenites already had their own way of life. They had their own teaching tradition and how they brought up their children. So just because they can't attend school in your society on your basis of reality, you take them off of their land and away from their families to indoctrinate them the way you want them to live. It says the Carlisle Indian Industrial School, founded by the U.S. Army officer Richard Henry Pratt in 1879 at a former military installation, became a model for others established by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Pratt said in a speech in 1892, a great general has said that the only good Indian is a dead one. Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson said this shit, by the way.
Devil. There you go.
In a sense, I agree with the sentiment, but only in this: that all the Indian there is in the race should be dead. Meaning, the mentality of having your own traditions in your own way of life, that's supposed to be totally erased.
Right. So just off of me reading that and reading on who I am today, man, or if I was an African American, I read that and I heard the white people saying this about me, I would be highly upset right now. Yeah. Right? I would be actually ready to rise up.
Yeah.
Just by how they even said that.
Mm-hmm. It says, kill the Indian in him and save the man. Meaning, kill his way of life and his tradition and
convert him to an effeminate, low self-esteem, no moral having fucking American, man.
It says, Pratt professed assimilation through total immersion. Now, for those of you who don't know what assimilation is, assimilation is basically the well, I'll just read it. It says cultural assimilation. Cultural assimilation is the process by which a person or a group's language and or culture comes to resemble those of another group. So basically what they did was they trained them in their ways. That's all this is saying. It says the term is used to refer to both individuals and groups, and in the latter case it can refer to either immigrant diasporas or native residents that come to be culturally dominated by another society. And the Gadites were culturally dominated. Assimilation may involve either a quick or gradual change, and that's what got us, man. The gradualism. Gradualism was what got us, man. Because Jake liked to be comfortable. So you implement something over time, and usually they're gonna get used to it. They're gonna forget that a change is even happening. Depending on circumstances of the group, full assimilation occurs when new members of a society become indistinguishable from members of the other group. And that's exactly what's happened. Now today you can't tell a Gadite from a white man. You can't. Can't tell you can't tell a Gadite woman from a white woman. It says whether or not it is desirable for an immigrant group to assimilate is often disputed by both members of the group and those of the dominant society. This is back in the American Indian Boarding Schools document. It says Richard Henry Pratt professed assimilation through total immersion. He conducted a social experiment on Apache prisoners of war at a fort in Florida. He cut their long hair, put them in uniforms, and forced them to learn English, and subjected them to strict military protocols. He had arranged for the education of some of the young Indian men at the Hampton Institute, a historically black college, after he had supervised them as prisoners at a fort in Florida. So basically what the devil did is he conducted a social experiment at a prison and see how they acted in prison, then threw them into a college with Judah and see how he reenacted with them. And all he was doing was seeing if they can actually reenact with each other as the brothers they're supposed to be. That's all that's doing. And this is a quote from Phoenix Indian School. It says the following is a quote from Anna Moore regarding the Phoenix Indian School. It says, if we were not finished scrubbing the dining room floors when the 8 a.m. whistle sounded, the dining room matron would go around strapping us while we were still on our hands and knees. And the word strapping means, to whoop or to beat. It says the 1928 Merriam report noted that infectious disease was often widespread at the schools due to insufficient funding for meals, providing good nutrition, overcrowding, poor sanitary conditions, and elements shared by many towns in the early 20th century, and students weakened by overwork. The report said that death rates for Native American students were 6.5 times higher than for other ethnic groups.
So y'all went from being able to farm, have your own land, have your own women, to having to be a slave, basically.
This is a section entitled Canada. See, this was even happening up in Canada. Like the brothers say all the time, the Gadites were up in Canada too. Mainly you Eskimos and the Alaskan tribes up there. It says a similar system in Canada was known as a Canadian Indian residential school system. On June 11, 2008, Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper issued a 3,600-word formal apology to First Nation Métis and Inuit people for the legacy of Indian residential schools, which he called a sad chapter in our history. Now, the only reason why the so-called white man is ashamed of certain history is because he got caught. Because he doesn't want the rest of the world to see him as the devil he is.
That's why they're trying to get us off the street, man. That's why they're passing all these legislations. Right? That's why they got y'all up under what's called Project Megiddo. Because they're really trying to get rid of the Israelites as a whole. Right? That's why they started with Judah. They started trying to take the African American history, so-called African American history, which is Judah history, up out of schools, right? That's where they started at, and they're gonna finish it. They're gonna try to finish it off with the rest of the tribes.
Yeah. And there's a whole background behind this, behind these boarding schools, man. Because if Esau doesn't know nothing else, Esau is a man of war. So Esau knows that if a war keeps continuing, there's going to be a lot of casualties on his side. So to prevent the casualties on his side, he had to come up with something to quell the mind state of the Native Americans. And, and it was all started back in 1622 during the Indian massacre of Jamestown. And this is when one of the first settlements that they had when they came over to America. It says the Indian massacre of 1622 took place in the English colony of Virginia in what now belongs to the United States. On February 22nd, March 1622, Captain John Smith, though he had not been in Virginia since 1609 and was thus not a first-hand eyewitness, related in his history of Virginia that braves the Powhatan Confederacy.
That's the John Smith and Pocahontas.
Yeah, exactly. This is supposedly the John Smith and Pocahontas. Which actually, that was a true story.
Yeah.
It says, and this is a quote. It says, they came unarmed into our houses with deer, turkey, fish, fruits, and other provisions to sell us. Now this is the John Smith talking. And it says, suddenly the Powhatan grabbed any tools or weapons available to them and killed any English settlers who were in sight, including men, women, and children of all ages. Chief Opequana led a coordinated series of surprise attacks of the Powhatan Confederacy that killed 347 people and a quarter of the English population of Jamestown. But you see how in the beginning of the document they portrayed the GAD as like they're the evil people, like they just coming to kill and massacre the English for no apparent reason. But no, this was a reaction. Now let's go to the background of the document. It says, at first the natives had been more than happy to trade provisions to the colonists for metal tools. See, we was being nice to the English. But by 1609, the English governor, John Smith, had begun to send in raiding parties to demand food. This earned the colonists a bad reputation among the Native Americans and precipitated conflict.
Right, demand food. Like, y'all gonna give us some of that deer meat that y'all got, right? Or we gonna take it by force. And that's what ended up happening.
Yeah. Which we was already willing to give it to them.
Right, see?
They isolated the Native Americans, burned down houses, and stole their food supplies.
That's because they didn't know who they was dealing with. See, GAD shouldn't have accepted them Edomites anyway. Why? Because they the devil.
Yeah.
But they didn't know that, right? Because they was going off in the land that they had came from. And even over here in America, they was going off because they was worshiping different idols.
Yeah.
That's why that happened, right? But back to what I said. They didn't even know who they was dealing with. They was dealing with their enemy, right? This is John 10:10. The thief cometh not, but for to steal and to kill and to destroy.
Right. And that's Esau, man. Esau is the thief of the whole world. He came over to the shores of America from Spain and other European countries to steal our crops, our food, our culture, and to steal our land. And to kill us off and be the dominant one in this country, man, or on this land.
It says, I am come that they might have life.
Right, and that's Yahushua. Yahushua, his spirit is coming back in effect, man.
That's why we bringing this up. And that they might have it more abundantly.
Right, so we can have life more abundantly through the law, statutes, and commandments.
Right, see, the law, statutes, and commandments. Now, who gave out the law, statutes, and commandments? Yahweh Shemawashah. Right? Hold on, where is this is Ecclesiasticus chapter 12, verse 10. Never trust thine enemy.
Yep.
Right? See, if y'all had, if y'all had kept y'all laws, statutes, commandments, y'all would have known that Esau, the Edomites, the white man now today, is y'all fucking enemy, man. It says, never trust thine enemy. For like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness.
Yep.
Though he humble himself.
Right. Though he came to the shores and acted like he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know how to farm, didn't know how to hunt, didn't know how to fish, didn't know how to survive off the land. So he came to you for help. Go ahead.
And go crouching.
Right.
Yet take good heed and beware of him.
Right. Y'all should have took good heed and beware of him, because y'all ain't know who the fuck he was, where he came from, and y'all just know that he don't look like y'all. Y'all don't know what's going on, so y'all was supposed to be mindful and beware of him.
And thou shalt be unto him as if thou hadst wiped a looking glass, and thou shalt know that his rust have not been altogether wiped away.
Because he would have revealed himself eventually. Well, he did reveal himself eventually.
Right.
Back in the document it says, the English violence merely served to alienate the natives further. Besieged within Jamestown fort for several months and unable to secure more food supplies, many colonists died during the starving time. Right, because GAD started to wake up to the bullshit that Esau was on, man. He started to wake up to the fact that, no, wait a second, these motherfuckers ain't here to trade and to and to be married with each other. They here to kill us.
Right, they're not here to be brotherly. Hold on, I got one more scripture. This is Psalms 55, verse 21. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart.
Right. So that's when he came to the shores of America, and then that's throughout time with all those different peace treaties, especially the peace treaty that Ulysses S. Grant made with the natives to create those boarding schools, which it was called the peace policy. But that ended up being broken as well as hundreds of other policies.
Right. His words were smoother than butter, because their whole intention was to take down GAD and take over the land to begin with. It says, his words were softer than oil. Yes, we don't mind trading with you guys, Could you help us farm the land, survive the winter? Sounded nice.
Right.
His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords.
Yeah, exactly. So like the document just said, we were willing to give them precious metals and food and all of that. But what happened? They came in and they actually tried to forcefully take it from us, while we actually agreed to give it to them. This is a quote from the chief of the Powhatan tribe. He said, "Your coming is not for trade, but to invade my people and possess my country." Chief Powhatan wanted peace among the English and the Indians. He also said, "Having seen the death of all my people thrice, I know the difference of peace and war better than any other country. If he fought the English," Powhatan predicted, "he will be so haunted by Smith that he can neither rest, eat, nor sleep." Right, because Esau will continually pursue you until you're totally eradicated.
Yep.
But his tired men must watch, and if a twig but break, everyone cry, and there comes Captain John Smith. Then he must flee, he know not whither, and thus with miserable fear in his miserable life. So they were driving us to commit suicide. That's all we wanted to read on this. We just wanted to show you the beginning of the atrocities that happened over here in America concerning the Gadites. Now we're going to go into the very first Indian boarding school. This is Carlisle Indian Industrial School. It says Carlisle Indian Industrial School in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, was a flagship Indian boarding school in the United States from 1879 through 1918. Founded in 1979 by Captain Richard Henry Pratt under authority of the U.S. federal government. Carlisle was the first federally funded off-reservation Indian boarding school. It was founded on the principle that Native Americans were the equals of European Americans. Which that's a lie, because the premise behind it was to conform them to their way of life, so they can be over them.
Because if we was equal, then y'all would let us keep our customs.
And that Native American children immersed in mainstream Euro-American culture would learn skills to advance in society. In this period, many Anglo-Americans believed mistakenly that Native Americans were a vanishing race, whose only hope for survival was rapid cultural transformation.
Okay, so if that's true, then why would GAD have needed... Why would the fucking devil need to ask GAD how to farm the land and survive through the winter if that was true?
Yep.
GAD and them got a fucking nation, right? With all this resources, but they need a devil to help them. I could have sworn they was there first. If you got a nation, that means you established. You got a sense of understanding how society's supposed to work, right? Economy.
But you know what? This is just stating that this is a product of propaganda. Because it says most Anglo-American mistakenly believe. That means that lie was put out there.
Yeah.
It says Carlisle became the model for 26 Bureau of Indian Affairs boarding schools in 15 states and territories, and hundreds of private boarding schools sponsored by religious denominations. It has been designated a national historical landmark.
You see, they keep playing off that religion crap. Because how they come in Christianity. Yeah. So-called Christianity. The white man's Christianity.
Let me skip down. Here we go. It says culture at Carlisle. It says, as a part of cultural and language immersion, children were supposed to learn English. School officials also required students to take new English names, either by choice or assignment. This was confusing, as the names from which they were to choose had no meaning for them. Luther Standing Bear was one of the first students to arrive when Carlisle opened his doors in 1879. Once there, he was asked to choose a name from a list on the wall. He randomly pointed at the symbols on the wall and named himself Luther, and his father's name became his surname. And the children had to change the way they dressed and give up traditional ways.
Right. You gotta remember, Israel, our names basically mean something to us. Our names go with our spirit, basically. That's why GAD never named themselves like certain names. Tiger Claw, Sitting Bull. Them names had meanings to them, right? So that was a spiritual attachment. That's why them English names carried no value, no weight to them. It made them feel empty, man.
Like and especially when you go from having a name like Standing Bear to
right.
Luther.
What the fuck is
Standing
Luther?
Bear symbolized power,
strength, right? Like Luther. Power Ranger.
It says the long hair of the boys was cut in Euro-American style, and the boys and girls were given uniforms of American-style clothing, dresses for the girls, which was nothing really wrong with that. But that whole premise of that was to conform them to a different way of life. It says the civilizing process began at Carlisle. Began with clothes.
See how they call it?
The civilizing process.
Yeah.
But we were already civilized and governed off of our own laws.
Wow.
It says whites believe the Indian children cannot be civilized while wearing moccasins and blankets. Their hair was cut because in some mysterious way, long hair stood in the path of our development. With the long hair symbolized a rebellion. That's why they chopped it off. It says they were issued and clothed of white men. High-collar, stiff-bosomed shirts and suspenders fully 3 inches in width were uncomfortable. White leather boots caused actual suffering, right? Because they got blisters and calluses on their feet,
right,
from wearing that shit.
They went from having wool, man, buffalo hide, sheep's wool, to whatever the fuck, what's this, linen?
That's cotton.
Cotton? Like,
It says Standing Bear later wrote that red flannel underwear caused actual torture. He remembered the red flannel underwear as the worst thing about life at Carlisle. I'm going to go down a little bit more. It says Model U.S. Indian Boarding School. It says Pratt was so successful in his correspondence that methods that many Western chiefs suffering from cold and hunger on their reservations begged him to bring more children east. The chiefs also wrote to Washington with a request to educate more of their children. News of the educational experiment spread rapidly, and many came to Carlisle to volunteer services and professional talents.
So, GAD actually accepted the Edomites way of life.
Yeah, because they were starving.
Yeah.
The Esau actually starved us out the forces to conform, man. And you so-called you so-called natives say this man is not the fucking devil, man. It's underwoven proof that this man's the fucking devil.
Yep. All right, this is Micah chapter 2, verse 1. Woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds.
And that's Esau, man. He came up with this whole scheme of indoctrination to keep the keep the Gadites at bay, and to save them more money and manpower, so they can grab the upper hand. Those who control the mind control the power, man.
When the morning is light, they practice it.
Right. So, and that's exactly what they did. They put their plans in motion.
Because it is in their power, it is in the power of their hand.
Right, because they have the military might. They had all the musket guns. They had the shields, the bucklers, the chariots.
And they covet fields and take them by violence.
And that's what they did. They took over the whole known American territory.
And houses and take them away. So they oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage.
And that's what they did with this whole boarding school scheme, man. They oppressed the Gadites and Reubenites' way of life.
That's it.
This is back in the document. It says, Pratt developed a photographic record of the school for publicity and documentation. The institution and the school were photographed during the school's existence by approximately a dozen professional photographers. So this is basically one of the highlights of Esau's history, man. It says the first and best known photographer at Carlisle Indian School was John Nicholas Cope. After replacing Indian dress with military uniforms and cutting their hair in Anglo fashion, the Indian physical appearance was transformed. Right, because we looked too intimidating for these Edomites, man. We were our dress and our usual garb was too intimidating because we dressed like warriors. I'm going down a little bit more and finish this document up. Matter of fact, oh, that was all there was. The Bureau of Indian Affairs. Now this is the government organization that has been shouted about on all the documents, called the Bureau of Indian Affairs. The Bureau of Indian Affairs is an agency of the federal government of the United States within the U.S. Department of Interior. It is responsible for the administration and management of 55,700,000 acres of land held in trust by the United States for Native American in the United States, Native American tribes, and Alaskan Natives. So that's all the land, including the reservations, that's registered.
Right, but when they first got over here, they had all of it. They had the whole North America and Canada. But now y'all was sectioned off to a corner, probably not even a corner of America, under government supervision.
It says, the Bureau of Indian Affairs is one of two bureaus under the jurisdiction of the Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs. The Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Bureau of Indian Education, which provides education services for approximately 48,000 Native Americans. So a lot of you people out there want to know what's going on with the natives and how is the reservation being regulated and how are their school systems being regulated through this organization right here, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which was created through the U.S. Department of War. This is the history. It says, first called the Office of Indian Affairs, the agency was created as a division in 1824 within the War Department. Similar agencies had existed in the U.S. government since 1775, when the Second Continental Congress created a trio of Indian-related agencies. Benjamin Franklin and Patrick Henry were appointed among the early commissioners to negotiate treaties with Native Americans to obtain their neutrality during the American Revolutionary War. Now that's the key words right there. Benjamin Franklin and Patrick Henry, two known devils of the American Revolutionary War. And they created the treaties just to make the Gadites neutral. So they would promise the Indians the Gadites basically not to fight while they were fighting the British. In 1789, it says 1789, the U.S. Congress placed Native American relations within the newly formed War Department. See? By 1806, the Congress had created a superintendent of Indian trade within the War Department who was charged with maintaining the factory trading network of the fur trade. The post was held by Thomas L. McKinney from 1816 until the abolition of the factory system in 1822. And this is going into the 20th century. It says, with the rise of American Indian activism in the 1960s and 1970s and increasing demands for enforcement of treaty rights and sovereignty, the 1970s were a particularly turbulent period of Bureau of Investigation Indian Affairs history. The rise of activist groups such as American Indian Movement worried the U.S. government. The FBI responded both overtly and covertly by using COINTELPRO and other programs to suppress possible uprising among Native peoples. And for those of you, and what COINTELPRO is a program of the FBI created by J. Edgar Hoover in the 1960s. And basically what he did was he used it to suppress any supposed uprising, and he also did it to start uprisings to push propaganda. Now this is another document from Wikipedia. It says cultural assimilation of Native Americans. It says cultural assimilation of Native Americans was an assimilation effort by the United States to transform Native American culture to European American culture between the years of 1790 and 1920. George Washington and Henry Knox were first to propose, in an American context, the cultural transformation of Native Americans. They formulated a policy to encourage the civilizing process. With increased waves of immigration from Europe, there was growing public support for education to encourage a standard set of cultural values and practices to be held in common by the majority of citizens. Education was viewed as a primary method in the acculturation process for minorities. So as Esau was migrating to the shores of America, they already had a mentality that this was their land. Yep. So when they came with that mentality that this is their land, they felt that their citizens and everybody else that lives here has to conform and hold their morality up to standards, which is totally off, man. You come to another person's land, which is their house, and you're supposed to respect them. But Esau has no respect, man.
All right, Proverbs 22:28.
It says, Americanization policies were based on the idea that when indigenous peoples Americanization policies were based on the idea that when indigenous people learned the United States, American customs, and values, they would be able to merge tribal traditions with American culture.
I got it up. Let me see. Okay. Oh, sorry.
As you've seen, it says...
Alright, got it. This is Proverbs 23:10. Remove not the old landmark, and enter not into the fields of the fatherless. Right. Esau, when he came to America, removed the landmark. Why? Because Gad was stationed in that land. Gad and Reuben. Right?
And Issachar.
And enter not into the fields of the fatherless. The fatherless was the Israelites. Was them tribes at that time. So y'all removed the landmark and y'all called it America.
It says they would be able to merge tribal traditions with American culture and peacefully join the majority society. So the only way we was going to have peace was to accept their way of life. That's basically what this is saying. And those so-called Native American Indians at that time, the GAD at that time, accepted it, man. This is Colossians 1.
Yeah.
Is that the next? Yeah, this is Colossians chapter 2, verse 8. It says, "Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men." Right, after the tradition of men and vain deceit. And that's what the so-called white man did, man. He came up with this this school curriculum and told you that it would do better for you to conform to this society, and basically deceived you, man, and gypped you out of your culture and out of your traditions and out of
Your resources.
your resource, which is Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai.
Right.
And then you'll farm in second.
Yep.
It says after the tradition of men and after the rudiments of the world.
Yep.
After.
Because how did they come? They came with Christianity, man.
Yeah.
Y'all wasn't supposed to buy into that. But y'all had was already buying into worshiping owls and shit, man. That's why y'all got taken down to begin with, man.
Yeah.
So Yahweh Shai brought that upon y'all for that simple fact.
And not after Yahweh Shai.
See? There you go.
And, it's back in the document. It says, after the end of the Indian Wars in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the government outlawed the practice of traditional religious ceremonies. It established Native American boarding schools, which children were required to attend. In these schools, they were forced to speak English, study standard subjects, attend church, and leave tribal traditions behind. Why? Because if they still had their traditional mindset, they would be in a mindset of kill Esau.
Yeah.
And Esau was scared of that.
It would have been Gad and Reuben.
Yeah.
And not Choctaw, Cherokee, Seminole, shit like that, man. But they brought that upon themselves. Is it Jeremiah 17:4?
Yeah. Is that Ephesians 4:14. It says the Dawes Act of 1887, which the Dawes Act of 1887. This is where you get the reservations from. This is the piece of legislation that enacted the reservations. It says which allotted tribal lands and severalty to individuals was seen as a way to create individual homesteads for Native Americans. Land allotments were made in exchange for Native Americans becoming U.S. citizens and giving up some forms of tribal self-government and institutions.
Yeah, I get it.
Cut it out.
This is Ephesians chapter 4, verse 14. It says, that we henceforth be no more children, tossed to and fro, and carried about with every wind of doctrine.
Right, and what is a children? A children is gullible. You so-called Native Americans and you so-called Seminole Indians and you so-called Mexicans, you Israelites, period, are the most gullible people on the planet, man.
Lost sheep. It says, tossed to and fro and carried about with every wind of doctrine by the sleight of men and cunning craftiness whereby they lie in wait to deceive. And that's what happened. Y'all was deceived because when the devil pulled up on them shores, he came in the name of Christianity. Man. We had to keep reiterating that because y'all still got that Christianity, that false philosophy as doctrine. And that's how they got y'all ass.
And when they came over here, they didn't come over here not knowing who was over here. They didn't come over here not knowing, that the people of God, the people of the Most High Himself, the Israelites, were not living over here in these lands. Man, that's why they came in the name of Christianity, or they presented the Bible.
Right. So that was a lie. And Christopher Columbus did not come to America. He only came to the West Indies, man. Yep. His son, what is it, Diego Columbus, what the fuck is his name? Came to America. Yep. Like, get that straight, man. Y'all gotta grow up. Get y'all history back. Get y'all understanding back, because we finna get the fuck up out of America, man. America is over with. Yep. This society and these Edomites ruling over us, this shit is over with.
That's right.
How? Why? Because we coming out with the truth now. This is what they've been hiding from y'all since they stepped their foot on this fucking shore, man.
Yeah. And, American Indian movement, y'all might as well just stop what the hell y'all trying to do. Because Achieving peace and equality in this country is not what's it's not what's happening, man, and it's not going to happen. The only way you can achieve peace is through the extermination of these fucking devils, man.
Remember at the beginning they said they set up what, COINTELPRO?
Yep.
See, the government set up these movements up under their COINTELPRO, so y'all still under the white man's subjection and operating under what his COINTELPRO, his FBI agents is giving y'all.
Yeah. Whether you know it or not. It says it resulted in the transfer of an estimated total 93 million acres from Native American control. Most was sold to individuals. The Indian Citizen Act of 1924 was also part of the Americanization policy. So y'all had to become citizens, just like when other immigrants come over to America. In order to get their citizenship, they have to take a test.
Yeah,
that's basically what they did.
Right.
Let me go down. This is entitled Grant's Peace Policy. So this is the piece of legislation that set the Indian boarding schools in motion. It says, in his State of the Union address on December 4th, 1871, Ulysses Grant stated that the policy pursued toward the Indians has resulted favorably. Many tribes of Indians have been inducted to settle upon reservations, to cultivate the soil, to perform productive labor of various kinds, and to partially accept civilization. They are being cared for in such a way, it is hoped, as to induce those still pursuing their old habits of life to embrace the only opportunity which is left to them to avoid extermination.
So y'all was indoctrinated, culture created, and basically put in subjection. Yeah. Slaves. Just like the blacks.
Yeah.
Just like the just like Issachar.
Yeah.
Ephraim, Manasseh, the rest of the 12 tribes, man. Yeah. For some odd ass reason, which isn't a coincidence, all you motherfuckers went under slavery under this white devil.
Yeah.
But we talking about Gad and Reuben, man. I'm just giving you a connection. There's some connection with them blacks, them Latins, and you Native American Indians.
Yeah. The emphasis became using civilian workers, not soldiers, to deal with reservation life, especially Protestant and Catholic organizations. The Quakers had promoted the peace policy in the expectation that applying Christian principles to Indian affairs would eliminate corruption and speed up assimilation. Most Indians joined churches, but there were unexpected problems, such as rivalry between Protestants and Catholics for control of specific reservations in order to maximize the number of souls converted. So they had us wrapped into this whole religion war. Convert or die. We talk about convert to Christianity or Catholicism. But that's not even ours.
Hey, the Lord brought that. They brought that upon themselves, right? It was prophecy.
Yep.
They started worshiping idols.
So this is in the section suppression of religion. I get Surah 12 and 10 back and Jeremiah 17. Oh, you got that already. Oh, okay. It says, with officials believing in the virtue of Christianity, the United States government worked to convert American Indians to Christianity and suppress the practice of the native religion. Spiritual leaders had been associated with leading uprisings. Right, so the spiritual leaders that we had, the so-called medicine men, were basically they weren't with the society, man. They was with holding their own and fighting back with whatever they could. That's why they killed off all the spiritual leaders. Mm-hmm. So they kill off all the leaders, and all you got left is the cattle or the flock, and you can indoctrinate them however you want to. Because that rocket defense isn't there anymore.
Yeah. I got one. This Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 16. An enemy speaketh sweetly with his lips, but in his heart he imagineth how to throw thee into a pit. He will weep with his eyes, but if he find opportunity, he will not be satisfied with blood.
Right. So he tried to kill you niggas off. That didn't work because his own people started getting killed off. So what he did, he imagined to throw you into a pit, meaning a system. And his whole system was designed to keep your mind at bay.
Starting with the peace treaties. And then after he did the peace treaties, he gained the upper hand, killing off his spiritual leaders, then putting the children in boarding schools.
Yeah.
So Esau never forgave the Indians. He already had a set mind frame. That's the spirit Yahweh gave him. Right?
Yeah.
He was given the sword to take peace from the world, so he did his job.
Yeah. And you so-called Native American Indian, y'all was supposed to have a certain mind frame. And what was that? That Esau is my enemy and he's the devil that the scriptures speak of, man.
They couldn't. They
Right, they had the scriptures.
And they were worshiping owls and stuff, man.
Right. They fell away.
Right.
Okay.
17, 14?
14, yeah.
All right, this is Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 14. Heal me, O Lord, and I shall... Okay. It was... Oh, slack. That's the one I was looking for. Jeremiah 17 and 4. And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee.
Right, and that started all the way back in the
1720. I mean, my bad, slack it.
700s.
Yeah, 726 BC when
they going into Assyrian captivity
under Shalmaneser V. And then from there, y'all fled to America to keep y'all law, statutes, commandments, and which y'all ended up still going off.
So y'all fell away, man. That was that falling away that Romans spoke of, man. That they shall not come unless there be Thessalonians. They shall not come unless there be a falling away first. Because you discontinue from your heritage, man.
This is Jeremiah 17.
And this is the whole reason, this is the whole reason why this is happening to you, man. This is the wholehearted reason why all of this has happened to you. Because you failed to follow after the Lord, man. So the Lord threw them curses on you, and through Esau was that whipping stick to whoop your ass and whip you into subjection, man. So you know what? I don't even feel sorry for you niggas.
Jeremiah 17 and 4. Because only the elect gonna get it, man. The rest of the nation that doesn't wake up, hey, so be it. We'll see you in the kingdom. Lord's literally of the elect. That's how it go. This is Jeremiah 17 and 4. And thou even thyself shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee. And I will cause thee to serve thine enemies, and the land which thou knowest not, America. Your enemies was even Esau, because it's very obvious that he killed off your leaders, put you in his schools, made you accept his culture, his philosophies, and now got you on reservations where y'all committing suicide and drinking alcohol, man. He destroyed. Y'all was destroyed just like the rest of us. We all was destroyed. But this is the calling to come back. It says, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not, for ye have kindled a fire in my anger which shall burn forever. Right, because y'all start worshiping idols.
I'm going to read this again. It says, with officials believing in the virtue of Christianity, the United States government worked to convert American Indians to Christianity and suppress the practice of the native religions. Spiritual leaders have been associated with leading uprisings. The goal of the United States government was to get Native Americans to assimilate to their culture. Some called this making apples, as the Indians would still appear red on the outside but would be made white on the inside. Not even mad at that statement.
The spirit of the devil.
Yeah. This changed with the passage of the American Indian Religious Freedom Act, although the government had stopped prosecuting Native American spiritual leaders. Which that's a lie. Right. Because they didn't stop prosecuting, they just left them alone because they all died off. It was getting up in age.
Yep.
Unless you have some other scriptures. Okay. Now this is the American Indian Movement. Now the American Indian Movement, like the brother said earlier, was just another organization set up by COINTELPRO, by the FBI. The American Indian Movement, or AIM, is a Native American advocacy group in the United States, founded in July in 1968 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. AIM was initially formed to address American Indian sovereignty, treaty issues, spirituality, and leadership, while simultaneously addressing incidents of police harassment and racism against Native Americans forced to move off reservations and away from tribal culture by the 1950s era enforcement of federal government termination policies originally created in the 1930s. As independent citizens and taxpayers terminated without good education or experience, most terminated Indians were reduced within a few years to widespread illness and utter poverty. So if this organization was supposed to be set up to help Native Americans and to help us fight for equality and our rights, right? Why are we falling to widespread illness and poverty still? Why is our economy still 250 years behind the so-called white man's economy when we were here first?
They're not turning to the right source. They're not turning back to y'all got some outside.
They too busy trying to become equal with the white man and live with the white man, other than trying to exterminate the white man, which is what they really should be doing.
It is.
Or honestly, like the brothers said, even better, coming back to the knowledge statutes of the Lord and waiting on the Lord to come back and exterminate these Edomites. Because we are not meant to live peacefully or mingle with these people.
This is Isaiah chapter 33, verse 22. For the Lord is our judge. The Lord is our lawgiver. The Lord is our king. He will save us.
That's right.
Right. So what is this? The American Indian movement?
Yeah.
That's not going to save y'all. That's not going to get y'all back in good standings, man. That's not going to have y'all living how y'all used to be in the ancient world.
This is another precept. This is Ezekiel chapter 11, verse 11. And it reads, "This city shall not be your cauldron, neither shall you be the flesh in the midst thereof." Right. This city shall not be your cauldron, meaning you're not supposed to mix with these other nations, man. The Lord gave us a strict commandment way back in the law that we're not supposed to mingle ourselves amongst these heathen.
Look up the word cauldron.
I'm gonna look up the word cauldron in the Hebrew. And the word cauldron is the Hebrew kayar. Which means pot, household or utensil, pot of temple, thorn, hook, briar, thorns, hooks. It says pot so called from boiling and bubbling. Psalm 60 and 10, Moab shall be the pot or basin of my washing.
Right, basically pot, like you said. What do you do in pots? You mix things. You put ingredients in a pot. You mix them together.
Yeah, like soup.
Right.
And that's what you Native American, man, that's what y'all drinking. Y'all drinking a primordial soup and mixing with these nations.
Right, they call America the melting pot.
It says, "The city shall not be your cauldron, neither shall ye be the flesh in the midst thereof. But I will judge you in the border of Israel. And ye shall know that I am the Lord, for ye have not walked in my statutes, neither executed my judgments, but have done after the manners of the heathen that are round about you." Right, so y'all trying to be with the society, but the Lord said he's going to judge you according to who you are, your nationality, are Israelites.
The law is
according to the law.
That's why y'all failed in the beginning. Yeah, Isaiah 42 and 22.
Okay.
Oh, my bad.
That's going to be last.
Yeah,
this is Isaiah chapter 42, verse 22. So this is my question to the American Indian movement. What are you going to do about this scripture, this prophecy right here? This is Isaiah chapter 42, verse 22. It says, "But this is a people robbed and spoiled. They are all of them snared in holes, and they are hid in prison houses." And the so-called Native Americans are right along up there with the so-called African Americans and the so-called Latinos and the censor for the most ethnicity locked up in prisons, man.
Yep. When you watch the documentaries on the Indians and them going to jail, they just like Judah now.
Yeah.
But they like, I just watched the documentary and you know, basically what they were stating was when the Indians come through, like, because I guess the dude was trying to get away from the Indian life, the reservations, because it's nothing but, you know,
gangs,
alcoholics and, you know, gangs and suicides, right?
Oh, the Canary Effect?
I think that was, yeah. What's it called?
Yeah. It's called the Canary Effect. It's called the Canary Effect. Kill the Indian, save the man.
Right, and what he was basically stating was, man, like, he gotta supervise his own people, and they come in there all fucked up off of drugs and alcohol. He said that's what they, in most cases that they be having, is people be on drugs and alcohol, man.
It says, but this is a people robbed and spoiled. They are all of them snared in holes. They are hidden prison houses. They are for a prey and none deliver.
Yeah. And that's how the white man thought he was going to coach y'all, by giving y'all alcohol.
Yeah.
Right?
It says they are for a prey and none deliver.
None.
So the American Indian movement ain't going to help you. Like the scripture the brother just read in what Isaiah, where it or was it Psalms where it said, the Lord is our lawgiver and our help. He will save us.
Isaiah
That's the only, Yahweh Bashim Yahushua is the only thing in this universe that's going to save you from this white man. No amount of bureaucracy is going to save you from this white man. From being in the situation you were in, from being in the reservations, to being slaughtered out in the streets by the policemen. Nothing's going to save you but Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. And none saith restore. So these so-called Edomites ain't thinking about y'all, man. You think they're going to let you come in and actually get some type of clout or a spot in the government and give you some rights? No. Because how Jake is, you get Jake an inch, they're going to take him out. The next step going to be is to overthrow, and they ain't having that.
We're going to let them find out who they are.
It's over.
That's why they getting scared now, though. Yeah. Why? Because of that prophecy. Hold on. Genesis
49. Yeah. I was going to bring that up last, but go ahead. Yeah. I'm going to finish this up real quick. It says, who among you will give ear to this? Who will hearken and hear for the time to come? And that's the question we asking. Who is actually going to listen to what's being said, man?
I'm sure I asked that question because we heard it.
Yep, exactly.
This is Genesis 49:19. Gad, a troop shall overcome him.
Right, and that's what happened during the so-called, after the massacre of 1622 that we just showed you. The cavalry came in from England, shipped in all their guns, their muskets, their cannons, everything, and destroyed you.
But he shall overcome at the last.
Right. Through who? Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. So your mentality is supposed to be like the brothers been saying the whole lesson. Come back to these law, statutes, and commandments, and come back to the Lord. And when the time comes for this world to be broken down, and the Lord comes back, you will overcome, man. You're gonna have all your land back. You're gonna have these fucking devils in subjection. They gonna be your slaves. They gonna build up your kingdom. They're the ones that's gonna be cultivating your land. They're the ones that's going to be nursing and swaddling your children, man. They will bow down to be at your mercy. That's where your mind is supposed to be at. Not trying to reach equality with these fucking devils, man. Because it ain't going to come to nothing but further your destruction. This is Jeremiah 2:33. Sorry. There we go. It says, why trimmest thou thy way to seek love? Right. Why trimmest thou thy way to seek love? Why are you still trying to seek acceptance from this white devil, from this pale-faced devil? Why are you trying to live with these people when they've been showing you time and time again that they don't like you? They have hatred for you. And they really wish they can eradicate you off the face of the earth. Like Andrew Jackson said, the only good Indian is a dead one. You think they don't have the same mentality today? It's even worse today. See what's happening in the news with the killings of Michael Brown. You got Eric Garner that just got killed. You got that 12-year-old in Cleveland that just got killed. Yep. You got William Dorner in California that just got hunted down by like a pack animal. Yep. They killing the people off left and right. And you still want to reach equality with these people. And you still trying to reason with these people.
And they killing Gad and them all. Like Gad and Reuben off left and right. Yep. They just not putting it in the news. Why? Because it's spiritual. The prophecies say, who shall rise them up? Judah. Yep. Judah's the top tribe. The Lord is rising Judah up first, man. Yep. That's what's going on.
Matter of fact, they just lynched the Gad in Oklahoma a couple years ago. But you know what, like the brother said, like the scripture said, who will give ear to this? Only the elect. Yeah. It says, therefore hast thou also taught the wicked ones thy ways. And what you have, you've passed all your traditions, all of your wisdom and knowledge and understanding over to the white man.
Yeah, because
and y'all took on his philosophy.
Yeah.
It says, also in thy skirts is found the blood of the souls of the poor innocents. I have not found it by secret search, but upon all these. Yet thou sayest, because I am innocent, surely his anger shall turn from me. Behold, I will plead with thee, because thou sayest, I have not sinned. But that's totally the opposite, man. You're not innocent. Nobody's innocent. Your crime was going against the law, statutes, and commandments of the Lord. And for that, you just drank of the cup and reaped the punishment that we just showed you today. You had anything else?
Yeah. This is back to what the brother was saying a little earlier. This is Psalms 149. I'm gonna start at verse 5. Let the saints be joyful in glory. Let them sing aloud upon their beds. The saints is the blacks, Latins, Native American Indians. Gad, Reuben, Judah, Issachar, Ephraim, Asher, Manasseh, Zebulun,
Naphtali,
so on and so forth. Right? Let the high praises of the Most High be in their mouth, and a two-edged sword in their hand, to execute vengeance upon the heathen and punishment upon the people. Right, so we're going to get our revenge, man. It starts with the knowledge first. To bind their kings with chains and their nobles with fetters of iron. What goes around comes around. To execute upon them judgments written, this honor have all his saints. Praise ye Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shah.
And you notice it said the punishment written where? In the scriptures, man. So that's telling you right there the only way you gonna get what you want, which is your land back, or so-called you wanna be treated like actual human beings. Only way to get that is through Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shah. I don't know what else to tell you.
That's it.
That's all I had. Yep, I read all.
Okay, well, double honors to our elders. All praise to Yahweh Shema Shah first. Double honors to the elders
And apostles.
and the apostles, and the brothers out there doing the work in the four corners.
All praise to Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shah. Mawath La Babal, death to America, and death to you through thirds. And hopefully, we'll reach extradition soon. we'll be extracted out of society soon by the Lord, man.
Right. Shalom.
Shalom.
1 little, 2 little, 3 little Indians, 4 little, 5 little, 6 little Indians, 7 little, 8 little, 9 little Indians, 10 little Indian boys.
Indian country paid their dues a long time ago. They gave their sons and daughters, shed their blood for our nation. They gave their lands, and it's about time the United States government met its obligations.